Hi, I'm Pam, and I would like to welcome you to the Live Authentically show. My team and I help other people step into their authentic realities a number of different ways. This podcast is one of them. I also have my first book out there. It's called SOAR, SOAR. It's actually behind me, and it's an experiential spiritual journey through a transformative event in my life and shows how I partnered with the universe to create my new reality. And I believe that this is something anyone can do. You can get to your own version of soaring in your own life, regardless of who you are, where you are, what you're struggling with right now. So I encourage you to just take a look at that. And also, I am an executive coach. So my team and I help other executives achieve sky high levels of success in all areas of their life, personal and professional. So we have a great show planned for you today. We have Susan Larkin with us today. Hey, Susan.
Hi, Pam. So nice to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy that you found the show and were interested in coming on and sharing your message. I know you're doing some really important work in the world, helping to transform people and help them find happiness and peace and healing in their lives. And super excited to hear about your personal journey and what inspired you to found your coaching business. And I know that you do excuse me, it's end of the week. I've had a super meeting heavy week, I have to say. So my voice is just like barely hanging on. Thank you for your patience. She does a lot of work around alcohol awareness and would love to hear about that and how you help your clients work through that and other things that they're working on. So thank you again for being here. And we're going to go ahead and kick off the show. You guys know know our standard operating procedure here. We kick off the show with the same question. And that question is, how do you live authentically every day?
Well, thank you. For me, living authentically, at a certain point in my life, I figured out that alcohol was the thing keeping me from living authentically. So one of the first things that I would say for living authentically for me is not choosing not to drink. And one of the first things I do every morning is look at my, get up, I drink a big glass of water and I look at myself in the mirror and I say, I've got your back to myself. Cause I felt like for so many years I didn't have my back. I was always, really so down on myself. And so it's really important for me to look at that woman, that girl in the mirror and know that I have my own back. And so that's part of it.
I love that. I love how you've shifted into an empowered way of living, where you realize that you are the one who gets to make the choices in your life. And would love to hear more about that. If we can rewind to that place where you weren't living authentically, you were depending on alcohol, turning to alcohol as a coping mechanism. Would love for you to color in, the emotions around that and how you felt, because I know that this is something that a lot of people struggle with. Alcohol, struggles with alcohol is something that doesn't discriminate. It can affect any age, any demographic, any level, any status, etc. So I'd love to hear you talk about, your struggles and how you felt emotionally, how you felt about yourself, your worth, etc. And so people can help identify with that. And then we'd love to have you color in how you got yourself out of that place and the journey to where you are today.
Yeah, that's really the message that I want to get out there to people, is just about how alcohol is an addictive substance to everyone. I think that there's this myth out there that there's these normal drinkers and then there's alcoholics, but there's really a big alcohol use disorders on a spectrum. And so I think what can trap people in a self-worth issue or a shame spiral around their drinking is exactly that myth that, like, if you find yourself drinking a little too much, you worry you have the capital P problem and you must be one of them. And what does that mean? And for me, that kept me stuck for a really long time where, I knew I was drinking a little more than the normal 7 drinks a week that's supposedly healthy, which is actually not true anymore, that the World Health Organization has come out to say that no alcohol is healthy. But there are drinking guidelines. So I knew I was above the drinking guidelines, but I didn't really know what to do about it. And that kept me in a place of real shame and blame towards myself around alcohol. And And so really to break out of that, I found a program called This Naked Mind and read its book called This Naked Mind by Annie Grace, and read her book, and really it revealed all these truths to me. And that really set me free. So that's why I really want to get out there and tell people, because I think we're really stuck. There's a huge mommy wine culture out there where like everybody drinks, of course you have to drink to have fun. Of course you have to drink to go to book club. Of course you have to drink, drinking is now associated with almost everything in our lives. And it's almost like you're not normal if you don't drink or if you choose not to drink. But for me, and especially I think for women in midlife too, like our bodies don't metabolize alcohol the same way. And so even one or two drinks, you can wake up feeling sluggish and just not really good and not really living your best life. It really was keeping me, I feel like I was just carrying around like a little black cloud over my head all the time about my drinking. And it was like I was good if I didn't drink and I was bad if I did drink. It was just very black and white. And that really kept me in just a place of unworthiness, and just constantly beating myself up about that. Like, I'm successful in every area of my life except this one thing that I couldn't get. I don't eat 5 pieces of cheesecake. Why would I have 4 glasses of wine when I knew that wasn't healthy? But that's where we come back to, it's a substance problem, not a person problem, because alcohol is addictive. And especially if you use it as a coping mechanism. And that's just science. So when I learned the science, was like, oh, okay, my body's actually just doing what it was supposed to do around an addictive substance. If you're using alcohol to manage your anxiety or stress, your brain starts to think, oh, this is a good thing. And it actually starts to think you need this for survival. So it creates sort of a habit loop or a neural pathway in your brain of like, this behavior is helpful to me. So that's what really creates like cravings, where you feel like, oh, I really need a drink. You come home Friday night, put your purse down on the counter, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, if you've been in the habit of always having a drink on Friday nights to manage your stress from the week, then that's just going to be your go-to. And so it's actually natural. Your body is it's created a habit around it. And then to break free from that, you need to really work on changing your mindset as well as your behavior. So that was the interesting, unique approach to This Naked Mind from maybe other approaches, is where you work on your mindset first and then change the behavior, versus just white knuckling it and trying to change your behavior.
Yeah, so I think that's such an important point to bring up. And I'd like to spend a little more time talking about that because, from an energetic standpoint, I do a lot of work with energy and spirituality and helping people find their value, their power from within. But, we have to do the work vibrationally. And that's the reason like behaviors don't stick, right? Positive behavior change doesn't stick. New Year's resolutions don't hang around for too long. It's because people are over focused. They jump in too late, right? They jump in when there's too much momentum around the behavior. And it's like trying to stop a high speed train while it's running. Like, it's not going to happen, right? Until you do the work, or unless you do the work from the inside out, unless you do the vibrational work, or then unless you adopt different beliefs, change your mindset, find the deep seated why, find out what really motivates you, etc. And I think that's really important, whether it's regardless of what the behavior is that we're trying to change, whether we're trying to be more focused, or whether we're trying to, deal with alcoholism or any other addiction, or eating, or, working out, just to, doing working out, in a way, or incorporating that into our schedule in a way that sticks, etc. So it's really important to do the work, like you said, around the mindset. And that said, what was the truth that you referred to, truths that you were, discovered while you were reading The Naked Mind? What was the truth, or was there one particular truth that resonated with you at the deepest level?
Yeah, I think the truth in This Naked Mind methodology that really set me free was that it's not your fault. There is nothing wrong with you. Like, there's something wrong with us if we can't get this under control, especially if you're a successful, high achieving woman or person, you know what I mean? Like, you've accomplished a lot of achievements, but you can't get this thing under control. And finding that out was just so relieving to me. It was a huge relief. And that this is a normal, like I said, this is a normal process of what goes on in your brain, and just busting a lot of the myths around alcohol. The fact that one of the things we use alcohol for is anxiety and stress, right? A lot of women, feel like, oh, that glass of wine is what, is holding our life together. It calms us down. But the truth about it is that actually when we drink, it raises the cortisol and adrenaline. So when we drink, alcohol is both a stimulant and a depressant. And when the depressant action starts taking place, our bodies, in order to maintain homeostasis, start pouring in chemicals to raise our homeostasis, which would be cortisol and adrenaline, which are the stress hormones, which is why you wake up at 3 a.m. with your heart pounding, or you wake up with anxiety in the morning, hangover and anxiety, and feeling like, really crummy. And like you said, for as far as like vibration or, waking up feeling like that, is not a great way to start your day. So you're already feeling like you feel kind of crummy, maybe not. If you've only had 2 glasses of wine, maybe not terrible, but you don't feel your best, but also you're starting out your day with a higher level of stress hormones in your body. So where do you think you're going to go from there? So finding out that this elixir that is sold to us as our coping mechanism actually is the exact opposite of what we think it is really helpful when you go to make a choice. So now with that knowledge, if you go to make a choice to drink, when it doesn't bring you that relief, it maybe brings you relief or it numbs you for 20 minutes, but the trade-off between 20 minutes of numbing to, the heightened level of stress hormones in your body and how you're going to feel the next day. It's sort of like 20 minutes against, a whole nother day. Really consciously start making a choice, which I think is really important in this process of really exploring our drinking and really starting to make choices around it versus feeling like it's a compulsion or something we just have to do because everybody's doing it.
Yeah. And I love that. And I think it's so important too, to realize that we have everything that we need within us, right? When we start, rather than looking outside, what is available to me in the outside world that can help me cope, we have to change that narrative to, what can I tap into on the inside that can help me really light up and shine my light to the world. And I think when we change that narrative and we change our vantage point, we change our perspective, the direction in which we're looking, then that's when everything starts to shift in a really, I think in a sweeping way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly where I was. Alcohol wasn't a problem for me until I started a pretty stressful job. And then I just fell into the pattern of coming home and having a glass of wine at night, not every night, but, more nights than not. But then, like I said, right away, I kind of knew, I'm over those 7 drinks, and I thought, this is something, that I probably should get under control. And then it's really interesting how the minute you try to control it, it gets out of control, and so then that just started this cycle of me trying to control this addictive substance. And then not succeeding. And then the stress of not succeeding. Well, where do you find your relief? Your brain thinks, drinking helps me, when I'm stressed out. So it just creates this vicious cycle that I think a lot of women find themselves in. And definitely that leads, I think, to living a mediocre life. Honestly, I feel like, I think it was Glennon Doyle's podcast where, Glennon Doyle is well known for having an addiction problem, but then her sister is also one of the hosts of the podcast. And she hadn't had one, but she had talked about on one of the podcasts, stopping drinking because she found that alcohol was, what did she say? A shitty consolation prize for her life. And I was like, oh my gosh, when I heard that, I thought that's exactly it. I've just sort of outsourced all of my pleasure and coping mechanism to alcohol instead of like really learning, like, what do I need in this moment? And so that's one of the techniques I really use with my clients is what they feel like they want to have a drink. It's like, well, ask yourself, what do you truly need in this
Mm-hmm.
moment? Like, what do you really need? Do you need, most of the time it's because we're spinning way too many plates, right? We're keeping
Yeah,
way too
yeah.
many balls in the air. So what are
Mhm.
some changes we can make there? Or do we just need a moment to meditate? Or do we need to go out for a walk? Or do we need somebody else to make dinner?
Mhm. Yeah.
And then asking for what we need instead of feeling like we have to be superwoman all the time and doing everything. And the other thing that I know a lot of excuses that I used to is also I deserve it. Another excuse that we use a lot of times for alcohol is, well, I've had a long week and I do so much. I deserve it. And so
Mhm.
another question I have clients ask themselves is, what do you really deserve? I mean, really, that's all you deserve is a glass of wine? Don't you deserve, I deserve love. I deserve, what are the
Yeah,
things you really
yeah.
deserve? And then really go out there and get those things. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I'm curious, one of the things I've been wondering about, because I do work with a number of people who either are currently or have struggled with alcohol in the past, and I'm wondering how big of a factor family history is. I do hear from time to time, alcoholism runs in my family. I grew up around a lot of alcohol. I saw my parents drink. So I'm curious as to how big of a factor that is.
Well, I know scientists say there's no one gene that creates alcoholism, but
Mhm.
everyone's made up of lots of different genes. And so actually, there's a book called Driven, which is really interesting about the genes for driven people. And
Oh,
those same genes also lend themselves to things like addiction.
okay.
But that isn't that the flip side. And that's where we see, look at all the celebrities that we see that, have had addiction issues and then have overcome them or have said, I knew this was going to be a problem, was going to keep me from being successful. So I
Mhm.
think that there are combinations of different genes. There's certainly what we've seen in our life, that alcohol is part of every single celebration. And so those are where those limiting beliefs come
Mhm.
into play, where we need to bust some of those myths or some of those beliefs that you're holding of like, oh, we always have alcohol at Christmas, or we must always have drinks for Thanksgiving, or every time my family gets together, everyone drinks, or it wouldn't be a fun party without drinking, or all of these are sort of ingrained thoughts and beliefs that we may not even know we have from
Mhm.
growing up in a family where drinking was prevalent. And so just on a person level, we just dig in there. I call it like fishing. We fish, we find a belief, we work on it, and then if we've completely busted it, it goes into the pail. And
Mhm.
once you bust those beliefs and you completely turn them around, we call them turning around our thoughts or our beliefs. Like, for example, the example I used about drinking and stress. Once you realize that it doesn't really de-stress you, it actually does the opposite, you can't unknow that.
Mhm.
So that one's been done. Throw it in the bucket.
Yeah.
So we just keep doing the work and keep busting those limiting beliefs that keep you turning to alcohol for whatever reason. And social's a big one. Socializing. So that's one of the things that I focused on early on in my coaching, because that was one of the things that was keeping me stuck. As I knew I wanted to have, I knew I was happier alcohol free. For the
Mhm.
most part, but I still was hanging on because I really wanted to drink for like special occasions and vacations and so that's an area where a lot of people struggle. And so I actually created a little workbook where there's some exercises in the workbook that can help you change your mindset or set your intention or set your mindset for socializing alcohol free.
Mhm.
Um, which has been helpful. It was helpful for me. Like all the tools that I came up with are tools I use to be able to navigate, social events and vacations and such. And actually, you realize that you have such a better time and you actually can socialize and be the life of the party, and everything you thought that alcohol delivered you can achieve in spades without.
Right,
So
right. Yeah, absolutely. When we stop becoming or relying on it for, for our personality or vibrance or whatever, because that doesn't stand the test of time. I mean, that's not what sustains us. What sustains us again is from, as you know, from what's on the inside. And I know that, one of the main guiding questions that I've asked myself throughout my life, throughout my spiritual journey is, how do I feel? And not necessarily related to alcohol, because alcohol is not something that I've struggled with over the years, but I have had challenges in other areas. And in order to, I started to realize that the more frequently I started to check in with myself about how I felt, asking myself, how do I feel? Then I realized that naturally directed me toward making the right choices, the choices that were in my best interests. And I mean, I'm pretty, hyper aware. I'm pretty aware of like how I feel emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, all of that. But I noticed pretty early on that, because in a time in my life, in my, in college and my 20s, when a lot of my peer group, people around me were drinking, like that's like the time in life when people are going out on the weekends a lot, having fun, whatever. I remember my husband said to me, like early on in our marriage, he's like, you just don't drink much anymore. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. I don't. Because I was very aware at that point that I didn't like how I felt. I became just really tired and lethargic and really boring, quite frankly. I'm actually way more fun when I'm sober. So, and that question, how do I feel, is something that I've applied throughout several areas of my life. So, even food, how do I eat, or how do I feel when I eat junk food as compared to how do I feel when I eat healthy, right? When I nourish myself with a salad, for example. So I think that when we tap into how we feel, that can be our compass, right? That can be our guide. And then we naturally and organically learn to make the right decisions for ourselves.
Absolutely. I totally agree. How do you feel is one of the biggest things that we use in this naked mind, because people do what we do to feel a certain way. And
Mm-hmm.
we use alcohol to feel a certain way, right? But then what is the trade-off for that?
Right.
And how do you feel the next day? And is it worth it? And so you start to just unpack all that,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely how you feel. I feel the same way now that I've become way more sensitive. I'm more sensitive about caffeine. I'm way more sensitive about sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like you said, with living authentically or living intentionally and living in a very aware state is just so much better than just sort of slogging through life. That's why it's like mediocre living, the slogging through life, kind of feeling mediocre and
Yeah.
feeding ourselves with mediocre, anything mediocre, even social media or the TV shows you watch and the sugar and the caffeine and just what are we feeding ourselves and how do we feel?
Yeah.
I love the idea of, I have a client who talks about magic mornings. And whenever she thinks about, being tempted to drink, she's like, oh, but that would ruin my magic morning. But I want my magic mornings, And so
Yeah.
it becomes a choice. And I think for gray area drinkers or for women where it's not, you're not at a point where like, hey, if I drink, I'm going to be homeless and live in there's always that hobo on a bench, in the park.
Right.
Well, that's not
Right.
most women. That wasn't me, like
Mhm.
I was definitely a gray area drinker. Um, but it comes down to, yeah, how do I want to feel in my life? And you don't realize how much it's holding you back. Because it's out of the way, like you're just so much more open. The chatter of should I drink, should I not drink, how many drinks have I had this week, that kind of thing that's just an ongoing thing is just gone, and the peace.
Mhm.
And then you're open to like, okay, well, what am I able to accomplish now,
Yeah.
living in a
Yeah.
truly authentic, free, open human being. It's like
Right.
this new person sort of started to appear.
Mhm.
The gray cloud went away and the sun came down. It's like, oh, who is this person?
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating how that works when you do the work and when you evolve that, what I found is that, like addictions can start to change over. You start to become addicted to other things, like good things that nourish us, like addicted to feeling good, right? Addicted to feeling amazing. And those are the best kind of addictions to have, is what I say, because, it's just something that continues to feed us and helps us feel energized and empowered and, in that place of peace and really truly enjoying life and finding joy and peace. And because that's really why we're here. That's something I think sometimes we forget why we're here. And life does get stressful, it gets complicated, and we just get layered, just stuff gets piled on, whether it's family responsibilities, work responsibilities, a number of different things. But and it's hard to cope sometimes, and people turn to alcoholism, drugs, whatever. But we have to keep reminding ourselves, get recentered and focused back on our essence, our truth, why we're here. Why are we here on this earth? I think this journey can really prompt us to ask the bigger picture questions.
Yes.
Right. And so what are some of those questions for you? As you coach your clients, what are some of those questions that help people see the world and their life experience through different lenses?
Well, I just finding the gift, I think, is one of the things. Even in things that happen that you think are negative, can you see what the gift is in that? What is this experience trying to teach you? Even looking into your past, like I could look into my past and go, well, this and this happened, or this, my parents did this or this, and it made me this way. But what's the gift in that? Like I'm super sensitive, or to criticism or whatever, but what's the gift in that is that I'm also very sensitive to when other people are hurting. You know what I mean? There's a gift in everything. It's just all about your outlook. But what's so fascinating to me is all the women I've worked with and all the other women in the coaching program with me, and men too, honestly, is to see them start to reach their potential, this potential that was literally hidden under alcohol, which is unbelievable. Because again, the media marketing is telling us that this alcohol makes you sexy, alcohol makes you fun, you can't have, what I mean, it's like you can't have a good time, you can't date without alcohol, when it's actually the exact opposite. It keeps people from really living their authentic life and reaching their potential. That's what I've just seen so many times. And then you see people become free of alcohol, and then it's just like the world is their oyster. And the true gift, like you said, the true gift that they have to share with the world is able to come forth. They just feel the confidence, I guess, now to go for it, to decide to become a coach, or to decide to go, teach yoga in Bali, or to, whatever their dream is, whatever that desire that was put in their heart by God or nature, or however, the universe, however you want to put it, of the reason they're here on this earth, just starts to blossom. And it's amazing. And like when you mentioned, the addiction in families, that person can be the person that can change everything for the rest of the generations. You break free, then what example now are you showing your children? And I've seen it across up and down in generations, where you stop drinking and then grandma stops drinking, or mom and dad, and then kids see a different way of life, and it just can change entire families.
Yeah, it really is powerful.
Yeah.
I love what you said about potential, because potential, vibrationally speaking, energetically speaking, is up there at the top of the vibrational scale, this emotional scale, and everything, all of our emotions, vibrations are all ranked on this scale. And so at the lower end of the scale is the energies and the emotions that are precipitated by alcoholism and by drug abuse and by gossiping and by all of these lower energies. And that's like clustered at the bottom are fear. That's what keeps us stuck and stifled. Blame, shame, justification, guilt, regret. They're all lower vibrational energies. And when we're in that state, we're literally pinching ourselves off from the higher energies. Everything that we want in life is at the higher end of the emotional scale, like, love, peace, truth, acceptance, potential, empowerment. They're all at the top of the scale. So you can't hold two different vibrations at the same time. So you can only be on one plane. So the main message here in saying that is you get to make the choice, right? Everyone listening to this, you get to make the choice. You get to choose the disc that you're on. Don't let society dictate that. Don't let your addictions dictate that. Choose the disc that you're on. And then when you intentionally choose those higher vibrational energies, that's when you open yourself up to everything you've ever wanted. whether it's abundance, financial abundance, peace, love, joy, relationships, etc. That there's unlimited abundance to all of us available at all times, but we can't achieve it if we're in the lower energies.
Yeah, definitely. And so many people, I see so many posts where it's I gave up one thing and gained everything.
Oh, I love that.
You
Yeah.
know, if alcohol is the thing that's keeping you stuck, and it does keep you in shame, fear, regret, all of those lower
Mhm.
energies you just mentioned, if that's the one thing that's keeping you down there, then why wouldn't you want to ditch it?
Yeah.
Or and there's nothing wrong with you in wanting to do that. I think that the stigma
Mhm.
around alcohol keeps people in fear, and that's where you stay in that little vicious cycle down there in the shame, regret, blame. And when you
Mhm.
finally, and that's where the message from the This Naked Mind, which is there's nothing wrong with you, helps you kind of open up to where this possibility of, oh, it helps you break out of that vicious cycle. And then, okay, now what am I going to do about it? It gives you back this power of choice. Like, oh, I don't need to do this anymore. This isn't serving me. And that's okay. That doesn't mean anything about me, except that I am badass enough to do something about it.
Right.
Right.
Right. It's absolutely empowering. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know we've got just a couple minutes here. This is fascinating, and I could literally sit here and talk to you about it all afternoon. But I know we've got to wrap up in a few more minutes. But I'd like to give you a chance to talk a little bit more about your programs and how you work with your clients and how people can get in touch with you directly if they'd like to reach out.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you so much. So, SusanLarkinCoaching.com is my website. And on there, I have two free offers that people can to explore their drinking. One is a 3-day discovery video series where I kind of talk about, I bust these 3 myths around alcohol and have a worksheet where you can kind of work through it. Just a great way to start exploring. Like if you're listening and going, yeah, maybe I drink a little too much, just go for it. Try it for 3 days. See what you think, and then the other one is the workbook on socializing alcohol free, because that's really the sticking point. People think, but will people think I'm weird? Or I don't know, would it really still be fun to go on vacation and not drink? And so I have a worksheet that helps you with that. And I love working with clients one-on-one because I just think I love seeing people get free, like we just talked about, seeing them blossom. See, my clients are the ones that are come up with the magic morning, right? I have another client last week and I said, I'm going to post this on social media. She goes, there's nothing sexy about a drunk woman.
Love
Absolutely.
that.
And so
Yeah.
um, I just feel like the media has really been peddling alcohol to women
Mhm.
for the last probably 20 years, like since the mid 90s, and it's gotten increasingly worse. And I think it really is keeping women down, especially, the mommy wine culture of you have to drink to be a good mom, you know what I mean? Or to find relief from being a mom. And I think that it's dangerous because alcohol is addictive. Like you wouldn't smoke a cigarette because you might get addicted to smoking, right? It's the
Mhm.
same thing with alcohol. It's
Yeah.
something that we should be a little careful around. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? And especially if you're using it as a coping mechanism, because it really can become more, you could become more dependent on it much more quickly when you're using it as a coping mechanism, because it creates that cycle of you need this to survive. Basically, your lower brain is like, this helps me, we need it. So I just want to see women get free and live to their full potential. So
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show and for all the amazing work that you're doing in the world. And yeah, we'll look forward to staying in touch. So thank you again.
thank you.
And thank you to all of our viewers and listeners. I so appreciate you. And I'm grateful that you've carved time out of your day to be here and listen to everything that Susan has had to share with us today. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.